Good morning and welcome to another edition of Fort Wayne Up Close. I'm your host, JJ Foster, and as you guys know, each Thursday of this month, we've been doing a recap of the Fair Housing series that have been taking place each Wednesday during Black History Month. It's bittersweet because, hey, this is the last one, but I have thoroughly enjoyed each and every Wednesday. It's been educational. It sparked some good conversation. Educating our community is what we're all about here at OMV. And I think, my hats are off to the city of Fort Wayne, to Human Metro Relations Division, to Fort Wayne Urban League and the Midwest America Credit Union for bringing this series to our city. Last night, it was titled, "We Found the Enemy and It's Not Us." So after watching that segment, they put together a great board that had our mayor, Sharon Tucker. It had Miss Linda Golden, it had Tamesha Fikes, and it had Melissa McCown from Habitat for Humanity doing a panel discussion. Now this morning, I get to have two of the four panelists as well as the moderator. So with that said, I'm gonna have each of you introduce yourself. Mr. Travis, we'll start with you.
Hey, thank you. I'm Travis Pope, President and General Manager of WBOI and last night's panel moderator.
And I'm Linda Golden with Legacy One, and I was on the panel last night.
And I'm Tamesha Fikes. I work for Midwest America Federal Credit Union, and I was also a panelist as well.
All righty. Well, good. Welcome. It's great to have you guys. Now, can one of you guys give a recap of, summarize what that last segment was about?
I'll take that. Okay. So last night's conclusion, you dropped the title, and I think it's real powerful. I always pause in it, but we have found the enemy, and it is not us. And for that segment, it was really just about the folks being affected by redlining, by blacklisting, finally banding together and realizing collectively that they could fight this. Whether that was the African American community or some very powerful folks who weren't part of the African American community, who just said enough was enough. And we got a recap of Chicago's involvement with blackbusting. We got a little bit about housing projects right at the end and the journey of a housing project in Chicago. But the most powerful moment for me is that those very beginning moments where there's a group of folks getting together in the gymnasium. They are a light of persuasion, of course, and one gentleman is talking about how he does not believe that living in a community that has African Americans and it will lead to wealth and prosperity for white America. And he starts by saying his name is Jim Crow. His name is really Jim Crow, and everybody laughs. And for me, that just set the tone for all of it. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And I think the key that you said, though, is funny because, again, each segment, and we've been on, and our audience has been a part of the recap. We've talked about blockbusting. We've been educated on all that. Mm-hmm. But the difference last night, the conclusion, was the people coming together to fight it. And we got to see, some of the remedy. And when you talk about the project coming down, our last segment, we talked about the Van Ryan Expressway and all those high rises. We got to see them, implode when they were taken down. And it's funny because had they followed Chicago Housing Authority, the leader before, what's her name is escaping me, Miss Wood. Mm-hmm. And had they followed her blueprint, we'd already been here years ago. Mm-hmm. So what would you guys like to add about the conclusion? What stood out to you? What thoughts would you like to share?
I think for me, again, it was a community coming together, and they made a difference. And that's one of the things that I just long for, to see strong community coming together to make change that impacts all of us. And they made changes, just by coming together and working together.
Yeah. And again, coming together and working together. Remember, there were people that doubted it because you had African Americans and white people that came together. The National People's Action was the group. And it was people that, were against everything that was going on, but was like, this is never going to work. You bringing all these people together from all these different neighborhoods, and there these people were, in 30 to 40 different cities. They were at a local level. they showed up in Washington, D.C., and that's what truly affected the change. You think about that. That's the thing that stood out to me. I was like, man, that was a heck of a strategy. That was beautiful that they were united because they were out there in Washington pestering politicians, and then most politicians, they come on back home and they escape, and they got back home, and who was there? The exact same folks put the exact same message in their head and in their ears. Tamesha, what about you?
I kind of have the same thing that Miss Linda did. I just think when we just showing the power of when we all get together. So not only is it the people that's impacted by some of these things that are happening, but when we have strong allies who step in and help, because we don't necessarily have all the answers. And back then we didn't have clear paths, right? So they were a lot of times the entryways to get into some of those places, right? But the power and the steam of this group of people, like you said, they started on the local level to see it implode into policies being changed, bills being put into, signed into law by the president. That's real change. That's real grassroots efforts. And we need more of that. We need more people to stand up, have a voice. It may not be your community. You may not live on that side of town that people may be fighting for or whatever, but it helps everyone. So I know we've talked about this before, but regardless of what side of town you live on, if something is impacting people, we all have to take a stand and help fight the fight with them. And I think that that episode last night just kind of really opened my eyes to like, wow, they were doing that back then. We can definitely do that now. We need all voices at the table.
That's exactly right. And you leaded is something that, as I was watching, to your point, how many of today's leaders, let's say our county council, our city council, a series like this, how many people do you think that they're aware of the history that transpired?
I'm not sure that they understand it to the depth that we've learned through this documentary series. I think we all generally know about blockbusting and redlining, but to see the actual people and how they were harmed and how it impacted them it really brings it home. And I think that, the more people that are exposed and were exposed to that documentary will really get it. It's not just something that's just out there. It's real.
Correct.
I think too often we rely on learning through osmosis. We count on the fact that if you went to grade school, right, you know some of these things. But seeing is believing, right? Reading it in a textbook and watching it in a film, an expertly made film, by the way, made me want to be a better programmer. But seeing it in black and white, you can't deny that. You can't. Not only can you not deny it, you can't deny the long-term ramifications, right? We're talking orders of magnitudes of less and wealth building for African Americans, right? Nationwide, not just in Chicago, but nationwide. I would hope that we would elect people who believe in our hopes and our dreams, our values, who have historical context for these things. Sometimes we don't get it right. I would hope that we get it right more often than we don't.
Okay. Tamesha, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, no. I'll chime in when I can.
It makes me think, and it's funny, you say we can hope, but a lot of it, I think, Mayor Tucker brought it up, talking about people's perspectives and, how you were raised and where you come from. And that's just it. We talk about, I say it often on this program, people living in their bubbles. If I don't step outside of my community, how will I know things? And so stuff like this, we literally have, our politicians are regular people. They grew up in our communities, with our high schools, went off to the institutions that we all are familiar with. So they grew up thinking America is one way, that have no idea. And something that stuck out to me when they talk about ghettos were created by white institutions, are maintained by white institutions, and ran by white institutions. So there is a structure to it. And if I'm here looking to do better, I have to be aware of these things. When you think about the FHA, the federal government being a part of this, like they said, everybody was a part of this. FHA, FHLBI, all the banking institutions. And they turn it into nothing more than a profit scheme where all of them were getting paid. A race for a profit. That's what race for a profit. And, we're all in the field, with the exception of my man in communications, that we understand that, think about it, FHA was approving loans, approving houses that they knew were substandard. Yeah. With the scheme that they know, okay, they're going to have to fix it up to repair it. In my mind, it really was literally uninhabitable, basically. Yep. But I'm going to hit you with some higher rates and get you some terms that I know you're going to fail in. Yeah. But they had the thing where they're all insured, so we're going to get our money back. Mm-hmm. And then once we get you out, we're going to put somebody else into it, into the same failing system. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, people had any questions last night. I had a question. You answered one of mine. You asked the other panel. I'll ask it today, and I'm giving my second one. You didn't answer, or you didn't ask. But the first was, they said our home ownership for blacks is the same today as it was in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And I asked, why is that? And I got, some different answers. You guys, I'll ask the same question to you. Why do you think that is?
Well, I will say, you mentioned me being in different business, but I think the value of greed remains constant no matter what business you're in. Mm-hmm. So that's problem one. I grew up in a household my family rented their entire lives until I bought a house when I was 26 or 27. Some of it is that gap. Some of it is educational. Some of it is institutional. Some of it is a lack of wealth building. And frankly, some of it is a lack of imagination that if I haven't seen someone in my community who looks like me achieve this thing in my family, I don't know that it's possible for me to do that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't answer last night because I wanted to make sure that the panelists got a chance to answer, and the questions were screened by some folks, by some staff folks. But I think that is a question worth asking. If we don't know where we're going and we don't know how we got here, if we don't know how we got here, we don't know where we're going.
Okay. Ms. London?
I think there's probably no one reason, and some of it is institutional barriers still in place. Some of it is a lack of exposure to other homeowners. How were you raised? Did you come up renting all your life and you don't even think about becoming a homeowner? I know when I used to work in the field with homeless women, and when they would come into my program, and one of our first meetings we would have, I always ask them, have you ever seen yourself as owning your own home? Not one person has ever raised their hand and said I did, because they didn't come from that at all. So I think, perspective is one thing, and if you don't have a vision, the Bible talks about without a vision people perish. And so if you don't have a vision, I think we always should have a vision out there, something we're striving for, something we're going for. And there's a lot of people that just really have no vision.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you talk about a plan and vision, and it just hit me. Think about this. And they had a family that talked early on. If I own a home, I'm looking at getting bombed. I'm looking at getting harassed. Yeah. Think about people that went through that. I mean, it was folks thought they were mentally tough enough to take it, but then it was like, I'm getting out, it ain't even worth it. Yeah. So now, what am I going to tell my kids, man? We not messing with that. Mm-hmm. We're talking life and death. It's not worth owning a home. Is not worth your life and everything you're going to go along to it. So we talk about stuff passed down from a generation. Mm-hmm. That would be one of them. Tamesha?
I would just add to what's already been said. I think to allude to what Miss Linda said, our people perish from a lack of knowledge. I think that is one of the main keys, is that they don't know what they don't know. And if they've not seen anyone in their immediate circle who's purchased a home, they don't know. They don't understand the dynamics. It's not taught. If your mom didn't own a home, you have no idea, right? And I think our counterparts, it's ingrained in them. They allow their kids to stay at home till they're almost 30, till they saved enough money to, get that down payment to purchase their first home. Our culture, we want to put our kids out at 18. Mm-hmm. It's not okay. That's how you build that wealth. And I think Mayor Tucker talked about it last night, being able to own that home and using the equity, right? Yeah. Being able to use that equity to pay off anything else, to maybe fund your kids' education, take that equity to flip that house. Buy that second house. Maybe you take some equity, you buy a rental property, right? So much is embedded into owning a home that people don't think about. The value of it is more than just owning a home. There's so much more access that you have. And I think the lack of the knowledge of not knowing all the resources that are out there. And I think a lot of it too is they're afraid. They don't know. They're afraid to ask questions. They don't want to come off as, well, I don't know, I don't know this, or I'm not comfortable. There are so many resources out here, so many organizations working to help people be homeowners. I think just start asking questions. JJ, we're all a part of an organization, Rainy. We put on educational programs every year to help people start the process, to think about the process. Homeownership is a dream that anyone can have. There's programs out there, just like Melissa talked about last night, Habitat, 26% DTI.
Correct.
Where you gonna find that at? Nowhere.
And what she didn't say, I'm on the board of Habitat,
Right.
3% loans. So
Right.
I mean, where are you finding that at?
That part.
So it is an excellent program. But like she says, front loaded for people to succeed. And those are the type of programs that it's going to take. Like you said, through Rainey, and I've got the past president sitting here to me. And then, like you said, you've been the treasurer for however long. These are discussions we've had openly and honestly and understand it because we see it every day. Now, with that, my second part of the question that didn't get asked, because I don't know, people think it's taboo, whatnot. But I said, with everything that we know is documented. The at a federal level, it was put into place in the laws, a systematically discriminated system. How come there has never been any talks of reparations? How come there's never been any reparations? And I get, in the forum we were in last night, I kind of chuckled to myself and told people, I said, I wonder if they're going to ask it. But I said, look, that's my question. They didn't look below the bottom line. And one of the reasons I say that too, because at the end of the day, when we talk about, again, our field, we know one of a big thing holding back homeownership is student loans as well. So if we talk about, okay, I've heard, we can't just give people money. But if you think about even something just like, I'm allow you to go to college for free. Now, when we talk about home ownership, that's a barrier that we just eliminated. There's not, those student loans to pay back. But, Linda brought it up last night on the panel, and it's something we talked about in our recap, $6 billion just in Chicago of loss. So now it well documented. Other races, we go to other places and we make amends. How come, that has never got any traction? How do you guys feel about that?
I honestly think because they don't want us to succeed. It's still systematic. It's still a way for them to oppress us as a people. So they don't want to make their wrongs right. They want to continue to see us scramble and struggle. And so it's just another form, kind of like we talked about last night. The parallels, the things are still there. You just got a different name on them today. And so they don't want us to succeed. It's still systematic. It's still a barrier that they know if they were to have to pay that out, we would probably far exceed the expectations that they think we would possibly have, right? You give some people money and they got a little bit of extra knowledge, we would be lethal, right? They wouldn't know what to do with us, right?
Yeah. My only thought, again, if I'm somebody outside looking in, you say they don't want us to succeed. What about CRA? What about HMDA that's been put into place? Because again, when I ask for reparations, that's the first thing, and you know me, I always think first thing is, you got CRA, we giving you, we got down payment assistance. So there are some things put into place. It's almost like we're not going to compensate for our past doings, but yet they have, like I said before. Ms. Linda?
Yeah, when you the $6 billion in today's dollars of lost wealth, and then it also made me think about our 40 acres in our mule that we didn't get. So even going back even beyond that, every time when there was an effort to at least help blacks coming out of slavery be able to get a start. White Europeans were the ones who benefited and not us. They shut us down, shut us out, and then gave what was rightfully ours to somebody else. And so we're in a day, then how do we catch up? Think of all the loss. Going back to then, think of the loss. How do we catch up if no one takes the time and say, we're going to do what's right and we're going to help you catch up? Even I think there's an effort right now in our federal government now to give reparations to the white farmers coming out of apartheid South Africa right now, and so like Tamesha said, it seems like there is a deliberate effort to keep blacks at a certain level, not to allow us as a people to rise above that level.
Yeah. And to your comment, there are people, I have been in meetings, and you're right when you say, how do you catch up? When you're going to put, we have special purpose credit loans out there. Mm-hmm. So, and again, you'll get people to say, well, hold on, isn't that discriminatory? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. But if it's not, how do we catch up? How we know? Yeah. So that's funny when you said it. That's my exact. I've been in meetings, had these discussions. Somebody's, well, why would we do that? Like, what? What do you mean? Why would we do that? Mm-hmm. Let's check history. That's why we would do that. And the other point I want to make, federal FHA loans, remember, it came about to get white people affordable loans at good rates. Mm-hmm. Blacks weren't allowed to take advantage of FHA. When blacks were allowed to take advantage of FHA was when they came on the crooked side and said, hey, we're gonna give you these dilapidated houses, but there's gonna be no repair programs with it or anything. We're gonna set you up to fail. Mm-hmm. It wasn't to succeed as others had in the beginning. And let's put it in perspective. I've got and again, everybody knows my stick. These are my notes I took from last night on the city of Fort Wayne sticky pads. We had HMDA came about in 1975. Think about it, 1975. I was born in 1969. So we're not talking about something way, way, way back. So that's when HMDA came about. And CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, is in 1977. And that's where you're basically having institutions invest in certain neighborhoods versus de-invest, which was happening. They literally were giving loans in certain parts of town, but when you go to get a loan, you could get a loan. They were sending out to the suburbs. Mm-hmm. So you think about that. And I know I get on folks about acronyms. HMDA, the Housing Mortgage Disclosure Act. That's what that was, 1975. It came about, and and I heard you talk about credit union. You're not covered by some of the same stuff that we are, but HMDA is a big deal. When you sit down and, some institutions take it very serious. And, it's checks and balances. Basically, are you loaning to people of color? Are you loaning to minorities across the board, whether it's a mortgage, whether it's business loans, whichever. It is it's not business loans, because we are on the mortgage side, but HELOCs, all that stuff, just tracking everything that you do. Travis, don't want to leave you out. Mm-hmm. What do you say about that?
I would say reparations would require collective responsibility, right? And the problem is, and we still see this today, there is no collective responsibility being taken for what happened, right? It is far easier for us to ascribe malice to a few bad actors, mortgage bankers, housing folks during the 50s, 60s, and 40s and things like that, than it is to say that it was the federal government's policy to intentionally discriminate against African Americans to make sure that they did not obtain a house. But until we can do that, and that's true on a range of issues, whether it's the cost of a college education or whether it's owning a home, collective responsibility is at the heart of that, right? Atonement requires collective responsibility. And as long as we can't achieve that, we're not going to be able to move forward on anything else.
Okay. That's it. Excellent. Last night you said something profound too. You said, I had to watch this twice. I couldn't bring it to myself to watch it the third time. You stood out in the rotunda before coming in there. So I mean, speak to those emotions, speak to that impact. Just that was a heck of a statement. And you're the moderator of this. So,
You know, first, I always believe in being truthful, right? It was very clear that I had exited the theater and come back in when I was introduced. But for me, I watched it one time in my office. I watched it another time at home, in my apartment that I wouldn't have been able to live in maybe 40, 50 years ago because it's a location. It was hard for me to watch, if for no other reason than it's not that long ago. Right. And we delude ourselves into thinking that progress is a thing that has been long attained, and it is not. That we hope that today is better than yesterday was, but we sometimes forget how bad yesterday really was. And there are a number of moments in that movie. That last part begins with a woman in that being interviewed on CBS News Reports, who blatantly says, when black people move into my neighborhood, I feel ill. She said, I feel ill. Yeah. And frankly, as a communications person, nothing up until fairly recently has inspired me more than CBS. And the idea that the network of Murrow and Cronkite sat here in this woman's living room while she chronicled how she felt ill about having to share her outdoor living space even with African Americans is just preposterous to me. And I just couldn't sit through it again. I said this last night too. It is important to think about education and being informed, but it is also important to think about how something makes you feel. And frankly, watching that makes me feel angry. Watching that makes me feel like I might have to go march on Washington myself. And I just, right before that panel, I just couldn't do that.
Got you. Love it. Hey, note number one. That's look, I'm putting it down here, but that was the Caucasian lady at the interview. Like, she talked about the families that couldn't sell their houses fast enough, cried in the middle of the night. That stood out to me. But the bottom line is, when you got thoughts like that, it was all created. Think about it, by the system. You had realtors putting that stuff in people's head, talking to them on a regular basis. Hey, your property value going to decline. Hey, blacks, what it does to the market. You think about it, other segments that they had the race hierarchy for home ownership. We talked, blacks were always at the bottom. So when they talked about property values and things. So again, Joe Citizen that trusts your government, trusts people that's smarter than them, are telling them this. Where do you think that mindset comes from? I mean, it's sad, but that's what it is. And those are the things that I have to remind people all the time. You know, when I talk with folks and they'll say, oh, I can't believe that person. They know better. They knew better. And I'm like, okay, so let's get this straight. You think they knew better. They come from a time when it literally was legal to treat people less than. They went to school. The teachers were telling them that they're better than somebody and people are less than. Their pastors and clergy were telling them that people were less than and you're better than. So you're telling me as a teenager, as a 21-year-old, I know more than my government. I know more than the officers, the people that be. You know, that's a tall task. And again, that's who I focus it on. It's just, the sign of the times. For somebody to just buck a system like that's some heck of insight. That's some heck of intelligence, because, that's really what it comes down to. My last question for you guys, or that I want to ask. Sharon talked about seamless city, which I loved it. A seamless city, and I've said right here in this chair, and I always use the motto: a city is only as strong as its weakest community. And my goal is, she says seamless, and that's what I said. If I'm driving down the street and Southwest looks no different than Southeast, or that would be a beautiful thing. So I ask each of you guys, a seamless city, is it obtainable, and where do you see us at right now on this? How close are we to being a seamless city?
I've only, with the caveat that I've only lived in Fort Wayne for 1.11 years. I do not think we're there yet, but I do think it's obtainable. I
think it's going to take some time, because we're in the catch-up stage. And so we're coming from behind to try to get to a certain place. We want the same things as anybody else in the city, no matter where you live. We want the same amenities, we want the same opportunities and whatever. And so, being in the catch-up stage, I think it's attainable, and I think we're on the way, but it's going to take some time.
And I would just say, I think that it is something that is attainable, and it's going to take us a while to get there. When you think of Southeast Fort Wayne, there was maybe 20 years that there was no investment in that area, right? Southeast used to be booming. We had the Southtown Mall. We had people, jobs were created. There were factories. There were all kinds of things. And as Blight started and people started moving out into other areas of town, Southeast was forgotten about, right? It turned into a desert of many things, right? Economic desert, right? There's no reinvestment in this area. And I think, like Miss Linda said, we have to catch up, but we also have to be intentional. So, I probably shouldn't be on some of those news article posts, but when they're talking about, this development's going southeast, and then all the negative comments, it's like, we don't have options. If you want to go get a hamburger, you got a couple options, right? You want to go, there's no sit down restaurant out southeast, right? So you had to think about all those things. People don't have access to the same things that are in other parts of town. And so until we can all be, like Mayor Tucker talked about yesterday, the equality of it, right? We got to make sure that every side of town has the same amount of equal things. And so we definitely have to catch up southeast.
Gotcha. It's funny you talk about the sit down to eat. I've been back in Fort Wayne since 92. And so regardless of whatever job I've had, I've always coached. So I've been in Harding, I've been in Wayne, I've been at Bishop Lewis, I'm currently at Southside. What do all four of those have in common?
They're all south.
All southeast. And you get out of the game 9, 10 o'clock at night. Hey, I want to grab a bite to eat. Nowhere to eat. I gotta jump on 469 to come around somewhere, or I gotta have to go out. So you're exactly right, 1,000%. And one of the things that we always talk about is wages and catching up. So we talking home ownership. Something has to be done in that department. And she touched on it a little bit. And again, I know I said last question, but this will be the last question. She touched on it a little bit. But as far as, we pull businesses in and we give all these incentives and tax breaks and things. And she touched on it. What if you were to give, have businesses, give them some type of incentive to where they can give that extra money to their employees to raise the minimum wage or raise the wage up to something where they can afford a $200,000 house. Did any of you guys speak to that, comments to that?
Well, I think Mayor talked about it. What the city is beginning to do is not just to automatically give these incentives to any business that comes in town. If you're a business and you're coming in town and you want a break on taxes to come in, but you're only going to pay your people $7.25. Well, maybe you won't get that incentive because you're taking the incentives and you're disincentivizing your workers. And they have, in order to make it, they're still going to need assistance, public assistance to make it. And so that makes no sense. So I'm glad that they're taking that stance. And the incentives will go to those businesses that are offering a living wage to people who work for them. So that's a step in the right direction.
Correct. And that's what it's going to take. Creative stuff to come together. We talk about it, down payment assistance, getting the income up for folks. That's exactly what it's going to take for us to thrive. You guys have any parting shots you'd like to say, or?
For someone who said surprisingly way too much yesterday, no. I think that the film speaks for itself. Shame of Chicago speaks for itself. You should watch it if you can. If you don't know anything about housing in urban centers and cores and the things that led to the situations that we find ourselves in many of our metropolitan areas, you should watch it.
Perfect.
It was very impactful. I hope that going forward that we as a community can find other ways to begin to meet and explore our paths as a community so we can come up with ways as a community how we move forward.
Gotcha. Tamesha, you got anything?
I would just say the film was outstanding. Like Travis mentioned earlier, and I'm not a filmmaker, but I think it was done. It was amazing.
Yes, it was.
And I think to the tune that we need more things like this in our city to educate our community on things that have happened. Because I think Ms. Linda said this last night, without the history of knowing where you've been, you don't know where you're going. Right. And so if we don't educate ourselves on things that have happened in the past and seeing the parallels of how there's still some of those things are still here today, we won't progress. And in order to progress, you got to have that backstory and kind of know where you're going. So I definitely think it was a great opportunity for our community to come together and to learn. But I think I'll also quote Ms. Linda on something else she said after the first series, we need more African-American people showing up to these events.
Yes, we do.
To learn this history because it's not being passed down and it's eventually going to get watered down and we won't be able to tell our story.
Okay. Beautiful. As you guys can see, it's great to have intelligent guests that can do your closing for you. Nothing left for me to say. I appreciate each and every one of you, Mr. Travis, Ms. Linda, Ms. Tamesha. Shout out again, Nikki Quintana, Human Relations Commission, Kelly Lindbergh, City of Fort Wayne and her department, Aisha Arrington, Fort Wayne Urban League, and Ms. Tamesha Fikes and Midwest American Credit Union. Excellent series, as I said, bittersweet. I enjoyed my Wednesdays, and like I said, with everything I have going, I made it a point to get there each and every Wednesday. Made it a point to be here to give you guys a recap each Thursday morning. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully I will see you guys coming up this Sunday to finish out Black History Month. We are going on tour to the African American History Museum in Fort Wayne. So tune in, 4 o'clock. I will be there interviewing Miss Heather Essex Guy. So tune in, 4 o'clock this Sunday. Hope you all can join us. I am ONB, Fort Wayne Up Close. We're out of here.